What's up, everybody? Welcome to another great episode of the GOOYOW Now Show. Today, we have my good friend, Billy Gleason, and we're going to talk about the roller coaster of life, going from the ultimate of highs of being on TV and thinking you've got everything figured out to the low of depression and realizing that maybe you're not going to be around for your kids or you can't even face your kids because you're so depressed. And how do we get out of our own way to make sure that we can have success? I think it's a very emotional and power-packed episode with Billy. He goes deep into sharing a lot about what has made him tick and what he's done to get out of his own way. And I can't wait for you guys to hear this episode. So make sure you drop in. Let's hear what he has to say. What's up, everybody? Welcome to another great episode of the GOOYOW Now Show. I am, of course, your host, Bob McIntosh, and excited to have on my good friend, Billy Gleason, with me today. Billy and I met at a real estate conference. And this is how I remember it. It'll be interesting to see if he nods his head yes or no for the same thing or not. But we were at a house, walking through a house, and he made some, to be honest, like cheesy ass joke that I don't remember even what it was now, but it was something. And I remember laughing at it. And then I started talking to him, come to find out like he lives not too far from where I grew up. And we sort of just hit it off. And then I'm pretty sure we went to the bar that night and had a number of drinks together. And have known each other ever since then. And that was, maybe 5-6 years ago? Maybe more than that. I don't even remember. Something like that. But that's how I remember it anyways. In the time, Billy has had a number of fascinating journeys. And one of the important things I think about his journey, and he'll talk more about this, is that he was on this roller coaster. And during this roller coaster, he realized he needed to get himself off of it. And I'll let him tell more about the story. But I think a lot of us, when we talk about or we think about getting out of our own way, we get caught up too much in what we've already done or what we think we need to be doing in certain cases. And I think his story highlights a lot of great opportunity for each and every one of you watching or listening to this to say, am I on a similar roller coaster? Now, as always, I'll be asking questions as we go through here, but even if this exact situation that Billy's describing that he went through is not the same as you're going through, I want you to think about how can the lessons he's learned, the examples he's giving apply to you? What can you take away from this that is your story and your version of getting out of your own way? Because we all have something that we need to. And by the way, even though I'm the host of this show and my book is called Get Out of Your Own Way Now, guess what? I am just as guilty about getting in my own way as anybody else. It's a constant and never-ending improvement area of my life. And so that's why I keep doing the show, because it's always, to me, fascinating to say, what did I learn from this conversation that I can take away into other conversations? So with that, Billy, thank you so much for being on, dude. I truly appreciate having you here.
No, I'm happy to be on. When you told me you were doing this, of course, I started pressuring you immediately, like, hey, dude, I want to come and talk. I want to talk about everything. So I do have a little bit different of memory of meeting you. I think it was actually in San Diego, and you were teaching an online class. That was a short introduction. I don't think we started hanging out right then. We were like, oh yeah, Bob, I do business in Buffalo. I went to RIT, and I'm like, dude, like, I live in Rochester. I do business in Buffalo. Let's be friends, But I do believe that your story of that I made a corny joke and then we got drunk that night, that's probably how I meet 80% of the people that I know in my life. So I wouldn't argue that.
Good deal.
But yeah, man, especially with listening to the different podcasts that you've had so far, which are great. And I'm certainly going to share this with all my audiences, because I think, whether you're a real estate investor or business owner or whatever you want to do, start a side hustle or whatever it is, we have a lot of things to blame, but most of the time it's, the person staring back at you in the mirror. And for all of the, roller coaster rides, when I've had successes, different things like that, reflecting back over the last 5-6 years is just like, well, when things went right, when things went wrong, like, the common denominator was always me and my decision making and the way I was doing things, essentially. And that wasn't even necessarily just in business, but my overall life. And so my roller coaster has some of the biggest peaks and some of the lowest valleys of any real estate investor. I went broke twice now in real estate. and I started real estate, leaving a pretty successful job in banking. And my highs are being on TV, being in almost every local paper within a couple 100-mile radius, and ultimately having some just awesome people believe in me and business, partner up with me on different things. And so, yeah, I'm excited to start that roller coaster, start letting you know what's going on.
Yeah. So, okay. So let's start with this. So you have a successful banking career. You decide I'm done with that. And I want to start doing real estate. And walk me through just the basics of what happened then leading up to your first high.
Yeah. So I was one of the top producers in the bank I was working for. And basically my first son was born on December 29th, and my grandfather, who I got my name from, passed the day before. And so it was a very volatile time for me. I mean, I'd never lived a day without my grandfather. I've never lived a day with a child. And so I wanted more time. It was right around the holidays too. And the bank, even though I was like the top producers, making them tons of money and everything else, like started giving me shit about it. And then, it was at that point that it was just like, man, I'm putting so much into this. Like I would bring my work home with me. I would read books so that I was better, to do that job for them, and like many entrepreneurs, you just one day realize like, no matter what I do, no matter how many coins I keep putting in this machine, it's going to be someone else's jackpot, and,
Right.
And so my father was a contractor. And I knew a decent amount about houses. I'd always watched different shows and had an interest in, flipping and, the different things out there. So, we decided to join a program, and I told people at first that I quit, but I'd actually got fired from my banking job. And it was because ultimately I was checked out and I did a few things that you shouldn't have. Nothing major, but ultimately banking is a very secure industry. And if you don't take that security, seriously, then you're not going to be working in it anymore. And so I didn't have a few papers that I needed, a couple things that added up, and they canned me, and couldn't have been happier when they did it. And that's the last job I had. So.
Perfect. Okay, so you get canned, and you decide real estate's gonna be the journey. Mm-hmm. And lead me into like what happened with that journey.
Yeah, so like anything, it was there was a learning curve. It was a few months before we got our first deal, and it became pretty quick. So I'm from Rochester, New York. I do a lot of business in Buffalo, New York, but I went to school in Florida. I have a lot of friends in Tampa. So we're beating our heads against the wall. We decided, maybe this area just sucks for real estate, at that point. This is like 2014, 2015. And so we decided to try our hand in Tampa. That went pretty well until it didn't. We bought a 10,000 square foot monster. Knowing as little as we did about real estate, we're like, oh wow, houses are selling for such and such a square foot. We're going to be able to sell this for 1.5 million or whatever. Not realizing that a 4,000 square foot at a price per square foot house compared to a 10,000 square foot house, like didn't quite go up the ladder, that way, which is just like common sense to me now. Exactly. And so that ended up being a massive loss. My father and I basically lost all kinds of money, went into all kinds of debt. And we had our tail between our legs. I mean, I had to do some different things to try to make ends meet, but ultimately that went so poorly that I ended up having to foreclose on my house. Just a lot of bad fallout from that. And we had my girlfriend and I had two young children at the time, literally just like a brand new baby while it was happening. And so, just the snowball effect of not having childcare and not having everything else, like I was done. And I was lucky enough at that point to have an old friend that had an LED lighting company, and I started running that company for him. And told him everything I knew about real estate and wanted to get back into it. And then he was in Buffalo. And so we decided to start a company, and, I started having success at that point and got my feet back on the ground as far as real estate was concerned at that point. Weirdly, I saw a Facebook ad that a TV show was coming into Buffalo, and they were looking for, a young couple basically that was newer in real estate and needed help from a gentleman named Scott Mcgillivray, who was most famous for a show called Income Properties, which is one of the highest grossing HGTV shows. And I called, and we had a couple FaceTimes, different things like that. Ultimately, I bought a couple properties that fit their criteria, and we got chosen for the show, which was pretty awesome.
Nice. So tell me, what's that moment like? Hey, is it like a phone call? Did they what were you feeling at that point in time when this happens? You're like, so you're going from tail between your legs, losing a lot of money on a house, to, hey, now we're going to be on TV with someone who's, I'm sure for most people are going, whoa, what's that going to do for our career? Where is that going to take us? How do we capitalize on that exposure? So what were you feeling?
A lot in a short way. I mean, it was surreal. It was an emotionally charged moment, just because, people that are successful in business and real estate don't even get that opportunity a lot of times. And we had just taken a beating, and we're ultimately gifted this amazing experience. And so I got my real estate license, just because, you get your 15 minutes of fame, how are we going to capitalize on this, and ultimately that was what put the most money in my pocket from that opportunity. But it was just, it was more than just the show. It went so well. Scott and I became really good friends. Actually, I'm at a vacation rental he and I own together right now in Wilson, New York. We went on to do a handful of deals, and I'm going to be on his podcast in a few weeks, actually. So you're breaking my podcast seal, but I'm going to be doing some of the similar things with him soon. And he really took me under his wing, and told me kind of where he saw my shortcomings and what I needed to work on, the different things I needed to outsource, my strengths and things that I needed to focus on doing more. And it went so well that at the end of the show, they had someone from HGTV come, and they shot a casting video with an opportunity for potentially our own show. HGTV got bought out by Discovery, and different things happened. And so that never really went anywhere, but it gave us the confidence, because it wasn't just we were a house hunters type thing, looking for a house, and, she was a teacher and I was a driver or something, it was our profession.
I love those shows. Hey, I make art in my basement out of, used canvases, and she braids bracelets for kids, and we'll have an $800,000 budget. You're like, wait, what?
Exactly, man. It's and that's cool. Being on TV, doing stuff like that, any of it's cool, but when you're on a show and you're doing what you do for a living, and people are seeing you have success doing it, it does that much more for your life going forward, being on something like that. So, so that went awesome. Zillow actually sponsored our show. They paid us $1,000. We were the only show on that episode. Just people loved us. So it was just wow, we really have something here, that was 2018. So that was a few years after, obviously I summarized the fail that we had and the getting back on my feet. And that was really the pinnacle, holy crap, we're going to make a shit ton of money in this business, and, inspire people along the way. That's important to me too, because, for me, having a family, it changes a lot of things. It makes things a lot deeper, because ultimately it's not just my struggle. With a lot of the struggles I've had, the internal beating that I gave myself was because of the fact that it was going to have on the people I loved the most, not really what it was doing for me. And so I was just wow.
How did that internal beating show up for you? Were you saying things to yourself? Were you you know, how did that manifest?
Yeah, it did. I mean, there's a lot of different ways, man. At that time, the depression wasn't as real as my second failure, which we'll get into a little bit. But it, you would think something like that would just motivate you. You know what I mean? It's like, oh man, I'm just going to go and run with it because, hey, I'm not going to have this happen or whatnot. And it does in a way, but at the same time, like when you're just down, and you know me, everyone that knows me knows I'm an outgoing person. I'm a big personality. And to be honest with you, the only reason that show was that successful, not the only reason, Gina was great and everything else, but the reason I feel like we got that opportunity is because people can connect with me. I'm a decent communicator, and if I'm not outgoing and don't want to have the conversations that I want to have, because I generally like talking to people and hearing what I can do for them more so than just saying what I want to say. But that depression made me like just not give a shit about the things that I did before. It made me a different person, and so that didn't really have a positive effect on the business. I mean, the motivation and everything else, I'm a fairly motivated person anyways, but having that take up so much of your mental space.
And so like, were you like negatively talking to yourself? Were you like, everything was a problem? Like, I would like to know, like, for you, like, and I think this is important because I think a lot of people, I think what can happen, and I've seen this happen to other people, which is they start down this negativity path. They're in some form of depression, but sometimes they don't even realize that they are. And so, I'm curious for you how that, was it like, you're not worthy? Was it, this is bullshit? Was it, you don't know how to make money? Like what were there things you were telling yourself? Was it like more of a physical thing? Like, hey, like I'm just going to sit on the couch and polish off, an entire DiGiorno pizza.
I did too much of that for sure. But I think my biggest negative when I'm in a depressed state of mind is my propensity to bury my head in the sand. And, especially when you own your own business and, I've done enough. I've done like 40 real estate deals now. So I know enough to know I don't know enough. Like when you have that much, when you're a real estate investor, basically operating your own business and you have so much to do and you're behind the eight ball and you're broke and you don't have the resources to do it. It's like, why the F am I even going to leave and do this when whatever effort I put in this day is not going to really make a friggin' difference in, my situation right now, because my situation is so freaking bad. And so you look for like relief and distraction anywhere you can. Netflix and chill, like, right. the DiGiorno pizza, like whatever gives you that instant satisfaction, because ultimately the satisfaction that you're looking for most out of the business and progressing your business, things like that, is so freaking far out of reach that you can't even taste it. You can't even see it. And so you're just trying to take whatever kind of temporary fulfillment you can, and it gets you freaking nowhere. It's, right. That was probably like the biggest debilitating thing, in my mindset. I went through various waves of that and obviously different degrees of, the different types of depression that comes in. But as far as a bad habit that comes with being in those situations, it's my propensity to just, I'm not even going to get out of bed today, type mentality.
Okay, I got you. All right, so you have this huge success, right? You're on TV, you hit the pinnacle, and then it goes downhill. So walk me through the downhill part there. And like what happened?
So 2018, we shot this show in 2017. It actually wrapped up around Christmas time, 2017. It aired in April of 2018. 2018 was my best year ever. I grossed just around $100,000, did like 12 flips that year. Just snowballing resources needed to grow a successful real estate business. And as much as being on TV and the notoriety and stuff, I should probably say this right now. Like, I don't think it was like a huge deal. Like, nobody has ever stopped me on the street and like, hey, you were that dude from the episode of Buyer's Bootcamp, or like anything like that. But within our small community in Buffalo and Rochester, like, one of the few people that ever been on a show based on our industry. So it got to my head a little bit, based on that. And, we had potential future opportunities and whatnot. And so I started making decisions thinking that I was bigger than I was. And I wanted to start spreading my wings more, doing different things. So I brought in, a couple different business partners, one in which was a contractor that I'd worked with before. And my mindset on that was, one of the biggest, I'm really good at finding deals, finding resources, building business, and trying to find, a direction to go in. I'm not great at running projects per se, the tedious day-to-day stuff. So I'm like, oh man, maybe if I bring my resources, which the only reason contractors don't flip houses in most cases is because they don't have those resources. I bring those to the table and I partner with a contractor, then he's going to be the yin to my yang and complete what I'm not good at. And, but I didn't really do a lot of, due diligence, barely knew one in particular that our business just absolutely tanked. And ultimately I got lazy because I thought things were going to be a success because of past successes, and not
like I have the Midas touch. Like this is going to be great just because it's me.
Exactly. Like, I've got a little bit of notoriety in this business. People would be thrilled to work with me. They're, we're going to do this and they're going to work their asses off because they're going to want to do more with me. And, ultimately, with that business and is when someone else, a business partner that you are expecting to spend more time on your business than you, has something they can make more money on, their contracting business, all of a sudden your shiny new toy of, hey, we can flip houses together, isn't really that shiny anymore, especially when from the time you buy a house to the time you get paid is like 6 months. In the meantime, you got a whole lot of meals to put on the table. And so, we had a bunch of houses that were just sitting because, guys were off making money other places for him. And we started buying properties that, he was giving me scopes of work for that were going to be, $25,000. So as far as the repair budget, so we would buy it, then I would get $40,000 to do it from my lender saying, okay, now we can take this $15,000 and put it towards these projects that, are behind. And we just started getting into this, like digging into a hole until, we had like 8 properties and a lot of them were half done and we didn't have any money to finish them. And so the culmination of all that really started getting heavy towards the end of last year, right around the holidays. And that's when I realized that I was on the brink of going broke in real estate all over again after everyone and the mother, we put everything on social media about, our successes, the newspaper articles, everything else. So everyone, anytime I talk to anyone from high school or whatever else, like, dude, that's awesome, like this and that, and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, man, like, I do not want to sit here and start eating the shit sandwiches of going broke in real estate all over again. Like, now we have 3 kids. We were sick of being broke already. Like, it's literally like 3-4 years. Like, we didn't even really get to taste any of that success because a lot of that success in 2018, we still had to pay for some of the past failures of before. So it's not like we could go and live any kind of different lifestyle yet. We were getting there. So we thought, but we weren't. And now, boom, I'm looking at it and I'm like, I don't know if I'm going to be able to be in real estate anymore. This is so bad,
So what happens on this second time, right? So it's almost like, you touch the stove, burn yourself and said, let me touch the stove again. What's going through your mind? Like, Are you saying, hey, like, I just need to quit, I need to get out, I need to be done? Are you saying like, no, this can work, I just got to figure it out? Like, what's going on in your mindset at this point in time?
I think that's that's the point where I really realized, and totally, not necessarily on topic, but as all this was going on, I was probably in the worst shape of my life, had some of the worst life habits, because I used to take fitness very seriously, used to take my diet very seriously and everything else. Then, all of a sudden within a day of each other, and actually like 6 months, I was a father for the first time. And, I had owned a home and had a family for the first time, but I was also a business owner for the first time. And so my diet, healthy habits, fitness, things like that, like I didn't even have any time to freaking think about that. So I blew up to about 235 pounds, right along when the shitstorm was hitting me. And that's when I realized that it wasn't necessarily the business decisions I was making. It was, but the roots of my decision making and my problems were a lot deeper than the things I pulled the trigger on in business. And towards the end of like December, January, that's when I, started getting healthy again. Started going to the gym, started, eating a little bit better, took advantage of the New Year's resolution. I had got another business partner that like things were just clicking with us and going really well. January of this year, into March, we put a bunch of houses under contract that were just like, a couple home runs, but they were no lose situations by any stretch. And man, I was like, okay, finally, like, hey, I figured this out, and things were starting to fall in place. And I was at the gym, Planet Fitness, in March when I just put a house in Florida under contract to do with Scott Mcgillivray, it was just going to be a home run. When I start seeing things closing down for COVID-19 in New York City and stuff like that. And I'd been like running on such a high. I just joined a new brokerage, real estate, had the new partner, had all these awesome properties under contract. That was going to be my way out of that hole I just described with the other business partner. It's like, hey, okay, I'm going to make conservatively this much on these deals that I have under contract right now. That's going to give me enough to get out of this hole, and give me a little bit more. Boom, let's execute. Let's go. We're firing on all cylinders. Right. And a week later, we were told we couldn't leave the house. And I'm like, fuck, now what?
Right. So okay. So if we look at the cycle, and this is what I was talking about at the start, which is this roller coaster. You've said, okay, great. Like, went in the hole, huge high, back in the hole, trying to build back out again. What has shifted for you? Because I know, like, you talked about, your weight and blowing up and diving into 75 hard, things like that. What was there a moment in time at which you said, hang on a second, I keep seeing this repeating pattern, it's me? Or was it like, did it take all of these things? Like, help me understand more about your decision to say, I need to do something different to get better results. Because I've had some good decisions, but I've also made some bad decisions. I need to do less bad, more good.
Sure. Yeah, it was definitely a culmination of all of this was, something had to give, right? I mean, I'm somewhat of I consider myself a fairly self-aware person. Whether I act on the things I identify being bad at or not, that's my problem. Not necessarily, I'm not a finger pointer. I can tell you, even when I get screwed over by somebody, I look at my decision making as to how I even got into the situation to let them do that to me. I've always been okay at that, but making the better decision next time was never good for me. And so, when COVID hit, we had actually just moved from Buffalo to Rochester. We were selling our house because I knew we were going broke. It was happening. We were going to sell our house. Like I said, I had a lot of good things going. So like, okay, we'll stay with my in-laws we have a huge house on the west side of Rochester, which worked great for me because it's closer to Buffalo, blah, blah, blah. They're great with my kids, so they can help Gina. And, thinking, okay, well, we'll finish out the school year, stay with them. I had a whole bunch of places, flips and stuff I could stay at in Buffalo, for days I had to work and whatnot. Coronavirus hits. Everyone had a different way of handling it, a different level of comfort. And her family basically told me, it's actually on my birthday in late March, that look, we get everything going on and whatnot, but we're older and we just don't feel comfortable someone coming and going. So you either are staying here or, you obviously can go and do what you got to do, but you can't go out and start working on your properties or whatever else it needs to do. So I actually had gotten a little sick a week after. And so I quarantined for 10 days within the house, away from my family until I had no symptoms. And I stayed locked in that house in Rochester for about 7 weeks. And things were just burning around me, and I couldn't go and do anything. And things were slowly starting to open up, but they still weren't comfortable. So my lenders were like, what the F, what's going on with this? Why aren't you there? Why aren't you doing this? Shit's bad. Where are you, bro? My business partners and everything else. So a day after Mother's Day, I had to make the decision to leave my family. And I came out and stayed. It was actually at this vacation rental. We just finished the inside, but it was 70% done at that time. And for 6 weeks, I stayed out here on an air mattress, and just, that was rock bottom for me, man. It's hard because I cried a lot, and I cry thinking about it. Because, my daughter is a year old, and that time is just so precious. My oldest kid, I didn't even remember when he was that age, and he's only 6. I'm I'm losing all this time right now. And I made the decision then that I wasn't going to drink. I wasn't going to eat like shit. I wasn't going to take the short moments of gratification, that I was before. I'm just going to take this pain, and I'm going to bleed the blood that it takes from me, and I'm going to feel it. And I'm going to do what I have to do healthy wise so that, the situation doesn't happen anymore. And that's really hard. A lot of people are just just snap out of it, or just, do whatever it was. It wasn't I left my family, I came here, I'm doing pull-ups on a tree, running miles, doing everything else, quick change, because, that depression and burying your head in the sand that I just talked about, that didn't just leave, so what I decided at that point was, look, I'm going to try to give myself every advantage I can, basically based on science, eating right, sleeping right, doing whatever I can to just be a little bit better every single day. I have this huge financial hole. I have no freaking clue how I'm going to get out of at all. All I know is I need to come out of this better some way, because if it gets any worse, I was literally losing my enjoyment of life, at that point. I mean, I would never joke about being suicidal or try to exaggerate, because I wouldn't do that just because of affecting, I have so many people I love, I wouldn't want to do that to their life, but I did not enjoy life for probably 2, 3, 4 months at least. And if anything happened to me, it wouldn't have bothered me personally. The only thing that it would have bothered me for is people that, hurting people that I love. And I'm man, I'm either going to start doing things differently, or I'm not going to be around anymore, because I can't even find joy with my kids, because I can't even look at them without thinking I'm failing them, and without thinking, hey, their life's going to be shittier because I can't get out of my own effing way. And that's really, it was hitting rock bottom that made me start making those decisions. And that's when I kind of started my crawl towards being healthy and making different decisions in my life so that I could make the right decisions in business.
Right. And so I want to quantify, because this is something that for all of you listening or watching that we talked about before we started recording, but the deciding to get healthy and all that, that's just the vehicle, right? I think the important thing here is making the decision. And once you make that decision, that's when all these other little things will sort of fall in line with that. And it actually reminded me, one of my early episodes with a guy named Nicholas Bailey. He was a health coach for me for a while back in 2015, 16, or maybe 2016. And he said, look, like the single most important thing you can do is focus on one thing. Focus on this one thing. And when you do that, what'll happen is all these other little things will start to fall in line, because what we're good at as human beings is having a focus on one thing. But because we're focused on one thing, our mind naturally prefers the order of things in most cases and says, oh, if we're doing this, let's also do this and this and this. So have you found that to be the case? Like, you made a decision to start 75 hard, which is a huge thing, right? Like I'm on day 75. Today is day 75.
I know, it's awesome, man. Congrats.
Thank you. But it's a hard thing, but that's one decision, right? You're saying, I'm going to do this one thing. And I've found, for me at least, is that even though, within this one decision, there's a bunch of smaller parts, but even this one decision has impacted a number of things that I'm doing, like the way that I show up, the conversations that I'm having. And a lot of times it's not even things that I notice until afterwards. I'm like, oh, that's interesting, the way I approach that. And so how have you found, since making that decision? And again, I want to be clear, it's not necessarily the decision was to start 75 hard, and right. Correct me if I'm wrong on this, but it was a decision to say, I need to make better choices so I'm not on this roller coaster moving forward. Was that a fair statement?
Absolutely. And you hit the nail on the head with, 75 hard isn't the reason I'm doing better. It was a great vehicle to progress, to get me from one stage to the next stage. But that health coach, I wish I would have talked to him earlier on before I went to things, because that's exactly what I had to do. I had to simplify things for me, because I wasn't going to solve all my problems, in a day. And, I recognize that, by functioning better, by doing different things for myself, that I was going to project out to people better. And that has definitely snowballed a lot. I mean, so I mentioned I got up to 235 pounds. This morning I was 179 pounds. And so 75 hard has gotten me, definitely much, much farther. I've lost almost 15 pounds on that. But I had started that journey, well ahead of time before I started 75 hard. What 75 hard has really helped me with, and what the decision to get healthy has really helped me with, is exactly what you said, where other things have started to fall in place. The way I approach my workouts and the way I approach everything that has to do with 75, the drinking, the reading, everything else has now started to shift into how I make decisions and other things. A really good decision that I didn't even know I was making was to read Can't Hurt Me by David Goggins, his book. I'm almost finished with it. And it actually, like on a run that I did the other day, I push myself as hard as I can, that I think. But David Goggins talks about a 100-mile run he went on that he wasn't even prepared for at all. And like basically ate crackers, like was just like wore the wrong shoes, like everything else. And to the point where like literally his toenails fell off. He was feet with bleeding, everything else. But he went through the transgressions in his mind of wanting to give up, of like having to give up, of, the different things and the different ways that he managed to push to the point where he had to spend like a week in a wheelchair and pissed all over himself. Like he couldn't even control his bowels because he beat his body so hard to do that. And, and then he's like, so many things like, when you're running or whatnot, your leg starts cramping up. You think you have to give up because, you're feeling discomfort, and the discomfort's telling you, stop doing this. Like, don't do this anymore. But ultimately, your mind, everyone's human mind has the ability to push that voice aside and take that next step. And this happened to me on a 5-mile run the other day. I've ran that much. I've ran like almost over 150 miles so far since I've started 75 hard. But I'd always stop, like when I felt that discomfort, stretch, whatever else, when I got that cramp in my leg or whatever else. And so that was formulating in my mind while I was doing it. And I haven't ran 5 miles straight through in 10 plus years, at least. And so I just kind of used that learning that I had and pushed through, and I did it. And I didn't think I could. When I started that run, I was not going out thinking that, okay, I'm going to run 5 miles right now, because how the hell could I? I haven't done it in 10 years. I didn't think it was physically possible. And so now it's kind of like a breakthrough for me a little bit, because it's the same thing in business and the different life decisions that we make. Is just that, there's no way I'm going to make 100 calls today, on motivated sellers, or there's no way, because I've never done it. Or at 5 o'clock, like, man, I've been going hard since 7 o'clock. Like, I still have all this to do, and I don't know how I'm going to do it tomorrow, but I can't do it anymore. So I don't. And I've made that decision 1,000 times over the last 5 years of failures, of just like, I can't. And it's not that you can't. It's just that where you are in your comfort zone, you don't want to, because to do that, you're going to have to get out of your comfort zone. You're going to have to do things differently. You're going to have to push and challenge yourself more than you have before, and more than you thought you could in a lot of cases. And that's something I'm on, like day 50 for me is on Sunday. And that's just something I'm like, all right, I need to keep this rolling. I'm like, because I don't even know where I can go with that. And in 2018, I grossed $100,000 in real estate, and I was 50 pounds heavier than I was, eating freaking Tim Hortons greasy food every day, like pounding caffeine for energy to get through and everything else. And I'm like, man, I'm getting close to where I'll be the best shape in my life. My mindset's changed about everything. I mean, I can't go anywhere where I haven't seen anyone in like 4 months, where people are just like, oh my God, you look like a completely different person. And my answer the last few weeks been, I am a completely different person. And I truly believe that. That's not just like cliche or, something I say because it's quibby. I truly feel like a different person, because these things I'm saying to you right now was not in my mental makeup 3-4 months ago, when I woke up every morning like, I don't even know if I want to do this day right now. It's just, I'm living in a different world than I was before.
That's awesome. And I think, I think this is for everyone watching and listening, understand that we're all going to have a roller coaster journey. Like I don't know pretty much any entrepreneur, and I'm sure there are some, but they are definitely the exception and not the rule, that don't have a roller coaster up and down, both mentally, financially, both sometimes, and many other ways. So I think this is huge. And I think there's a lot that we can take away. And again, I think 75 Hard is a great vehicle for getting there. But the ultimate thing is that you have to make the decision for yourself that, hey, this is going to be something that I choose. And it doesn't have to even be 75 Hard. It can just be, hey, listen, I'm going to do this one thing moving forward, and see the results. And I'm excited to say, have you back on in a year or 2 years from now and say, what's happened, from here we are. So let's just take a note. Today is September 18th, which is when we're filming this. Obviously, the episode is going to come out much later than that, but when we're filming it, so September 18th in 2021, what's happened for that year. It'll be interesting to see, how your last time has been. So thank you for sharing that journey. I appreciate it. I think a lot of people are going to derive a lot of value from that.
I hope so, man. It's something that, like, I've never told anybody a lot of the things I just shared on this, and so this is a big breakthrough. I'm so appreciative to you for giving me this platform, because ultimately, like, I'm not too far away from being way too embarrassed to saying this stuff. I think that this is a breakthrough for me, because I'm in a place where I actually genuinely feel like confident internally that I've turned the page, and I don't have the self-doubt of, hey, I don't want to share this because in a year from now, when I'm not doing shit again, I'm going to look like a jackass for sharing this story and then being a fucking tool all over again, you know? And so I appreciate you sharing this platform. I mean, the one, you know, cliche type saying that we've heard probably a lot of times, but has ring like very true for me is doing things that's going to get you what you want most, not doing what you want most right now. I mean, there's a million different ways to split it, but that's ultimately what working on yourself physically and mentally is going to, you know, put in your head and transgress into your life when you finally make that decision. And you know, be self-aware is the first step, and know, like, really look at your day and see what you could do to get more out of it. That's the first step, but ultimately know yourself and know why you're doing those things and what can you do, whether it's just walking half a mile more the next day, or instead of having that beer after work, you know, drink water, or do something healthy. I mean, it really is one good decision per day, and steamrolling that and stacking days away from what you want. I know, because I used to watch and listen to things and shows like this all the time. It seems effing crazy to people that are buried as deep as I was buried, and might be buried that they are right now, you know, because people look for quick outs. There isn't any quick outs. There isn't any quick changes. There is no get rich quick, unless you're putting your faith into winning the lottery or something stupid like that. But don't beat yourself up. Take it one day at a time. Be aware of what you're doing to get better, and don't give yourself so much credit to where, like, oh, I had a really good day yesterday, and let it slide. Stack days, stack good things, and it adds up quicker than you could think. I was just telling you where I was. That wasn't 5 years ago. That was 5 months ago. And making those decisions and taking advantage of it and capitalizing every day has led me to the point where I can have this conversation with you and everything else. And so, you know, anyone I know, share some of my handles and whatnot. If anyone wants to reach out to me or talk about it or whatnot, I had a lot of people. I shouldn't say this was just my own. I had a lot of people that helped me through, and that were gracious with their time and their advice and their life stories to help build this to me. And if I can be a help to anyone going through a tough time right now, I feel like it's all I can do is to give back. It would be great for me. So.
Perfect. And so where can they reach out to you if they want to?
So you can follow me on Facebook, facebook.com/BillyGleason23. I've been doing a lot more on Instagram and actually TikTok. And my handles there is @BillyGleason_ after Billy Gleason. So reach out to me. My email, homes@BillyGleason.com, or reach out to Bob to get in touch with me. Like I said, I'd love to pay it back.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for being on, man. And for all of you listening or watching, appreciate having you on. As always, you're going to want to subscribe so you get notified of every new show every single week that we release. There's always a lot of great information in these, and I think we're all learning and growing. The comments that I get from each of you guys is great. So if you do have comments, questions, anything you want to talk about in relation to this episode, drop it on in the comments wherever you're listening to, or reach out to us via social media. And then also make sure that you leave a review on either iTunes or Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, wherever it is. Those reviews help us get to more folks, and that's the most important thing. We can't help more people get out of their own way unless you do your part in helping us get to this show in front of them. So appreciate you all for listening. We'll see you next week with another great episode. Thanks so much. Bye.
Go Bills.
Yeah.